Hey everyone, hope you had an amazing week and welcome to our lesson today. Today we're going to talk about something very important, and that's how to sound more polite when you speak English. Now, especially if you have a job in an English-speaking country, maybe you communicate at work with your boss and colleagues, it's very important to know how to sound more professional, how to sound more polite, so you can make the best impression possible. So let's get right into this lesson and start with the fundamental principle of sounding more polite, which is to be more indirect. The more indirect we are, the more polite we sound. Sometimes when we're too direct, this can actually come across as rude, and especially to people we don't know very well. Of course, as I said, when you're at work, it's very, very important to keep your language as respectful as possible. And we're going to learn how to do that very shortly. So, I want to introduce to you the topic of hedging. Now, what is hedging? So, as I said, to sound more polite, we need to make our language more indirect. And we use something called hedging to do this. Now, imagine you're stretching your language apart. The more you stretch it, the more polite you sound. Okay? And I'm going to show you an example of this now. I want to leave early today. That's pretty rude, right? I want to leave early today. That's very direct. And it also does sound rude. Bit more polite. I'd like to leave early today, please. So of course we've added please, but we've turned I want into I'd like. I would like. Now if we want to sound more polite, you can say, do you mind if I leave early today? Do you mind if I leave early today? Now, the most polite form here is, would you mind if I left early today? Would you mind if I left early today? So you can see each sentence is gradually getting stretched apart even more. It's getting longer, it's getting a bit more complicated, but it's getting more polite, okay? So this was just the principle of hedging. Now we're going to look at some very concrete examples, and I'm going to show you exactly what you can say to sound more polite. So let's look at this chart here. And of course, you don't need to take any notes because you're going to have access to a PDF document which has all this information on it. So just watch for now and you can study that later. All right. Can I? Can I? For example, can I have a glass of water? That sounds very rude. It's much better to say, could I please? Could I please have a glass of water? May I please? May I please have a glass of water? Or would it be possible to have a glass of water, please? Would it be possible to have a glass of water? Please. So essentially, you're just replacing can I with could I please, may I please, or would it be possible to, please. So obviously these sound much more polite, much more respectful than these here. All right, I can't. For example, I can't meet the project deadline on time. Or I can't come to work today because I'm sick. Now, this sounds very direct. There's nothing wrong with this, but it would be better to say, I'm afraid I can't, or it won't be possible for me to. For example, I'm afraid I can't meet the project deadline on time. I'm afraid it won't be possible for me to come to work today because I'm sick. So you're replacing I can't with I'm afraid I can't, or it won't be possible for me to. Now, when you have an imperative, for example, come over here or sit down, right? Those are very strong. Or you're asking someone, can you come over here? Can you sit down? That also sounds quite rude, very direct. You can replace these with could you please? For example, could you please come over here? Could you please sit down? Would you please? Would you please come over here? Would you please sit down? And lastly, do or would you mind, and then the ing form of the verb, please. For example, do you mind coming over here for a moment, please? Would you mind sitting down, please? Would you mind sitting down, please? So it's very important when you're asking someone to do something, you need to use the ing form here, right? Would you mind sitting? Do you mind coming? Okay, moving on now. I want to. I want to speak. Excuse me. I want to speak with you now. I want to leave early today. Now you can replace I want to with I would like, which is contracted to I'd like. And you can also add please or if possible at the end. For example, I would like to speak with you now if possible. I'd like to leave early today, please. Now you can also say, do you mind if I? And you have to use the present simple of the verb here. For example, do you mind if I speak with you now? Or do you mind if I leave early today? Now, let's look at this here. Would you mind if I, and then the past simple. So we're stretching it out even more. We're not even using the present tense here. We're actually using the past simple. That's how indirect this is. Remember, as I said, the more indirect the sentence is, the more polite it is. So this is obviously by far the most polite way of saying this. Would you mind if I spoke with you now? Would you mind if I left early today? So remember, with do you mind, it's best to use the present simple. But with would you mind if I, it's best to use the past. So very small difference here. And it's not the end of the world if you do use the present simple. It just sounds a lot more elegant, a lot better. So I would recommend you do use the past simple here. Would you mind if I spoke with you? Would you mind if I left early today? Okay. Now, do you, right? Do you have a pen I could borrow? Do you know whether John will be coming to work tomorrow? Now, this is fine, but again, if we want to make it a bit more polite, we can add the word by chance. Do you by chance have a pen I could borrow? Or you could put by chance at the beginning. For example, by chance, do you know whether John will be coming to work tomorrow? So just by adding this word, again, you're stretching it out a bit more and it sounds much more polite. You could also use the construction, I was just wondering if you, and then the past simple. For example, I was just wondering if you had a pen I could borrow. If you had, so past simple here. Or I was just wondering if you knew, past simple, whether John will be coming to work tomorrow. So when we're forming a question with do you can add by chance, or you can use the construction, I was just wondering if you, and the past simple. Okay, now if you want to ask somebody to do something, for example, let me know, ask him, or finish this report, So these are all commands. You're asking somebody to do these. You can add when you get a moment or when you get a chance. For example, could you please let me know when you get a moment? Could you please ask him when you get a chance? So both are correct. And both are very, very elegant, very nice. I would recommend you try to use these. Lastly, this is a bit more formal, but it still sounds very, very professional. At your earliest convenience. At your earliest convenience. For example, could you please finish this report at your earliest convenience? Now, you don't always need to say earliest. You can just say at your convenience. But the full phrase here is at your earliest convenience. So whenever it works for you, when you get a moment, when you get a chance. Okay, that was our lesson today on sounding more polite. Of course, this was just an introduction. In the future, we're going to look at this topic in more detail. There was a lot of information here today, and I want you to practice using these sentences when you speak. Maybe you're at work, maybe you're at school, or maybe you're just talking with your friends. These are great alternatives to sound a bit more polite, more professional, and to make a better impression on people. So try to use these, and I hope you have a great week. I will see you in the next lesson. Bye for now.